Hi, this is Mr. Ward, and I'm doing another commentary on the 2017 8th grade Math MCAS released questions. This one's about scientific notation and scientific notation operations. So this is question number 2. We are comparing the sizes of Earth, Saturn, and a lacrosse ball, like you do. And the radius of Earth is approximately 6,378,100 meters. And we want to know what the radius of Earth is in meters written as a single digit number. What they mean is to round up to this single digit of 6 and then multiply by a power of 10. That just means put this in scientific notation. So the number is going to be 6. So let's put that down. So it's going to be 6. We drop everything after the 6. The next number is a 3, so we're not rounding up. So it's going to be 6, and then that's going to be times. We want to capture what the place value of that 6 is. It's the millions, and the millions is 10 to the 6. If you weren't sure about that, what you would do is you would count the number of place values to the right of the 6 until you got to a decimal. And there's a hidden unspoken decimal right after that 100. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's 10 to the 6th meters. Okay, and that is a reasonable estimate of the radius of the Earth. Now we're looking at the radius of Saturn, which is 6 times 10 to the 7th meters. Use your answer in part A to estimate how many times greater the radius of Saturn is than the radius of the Earth. Well, now we want to do division if we want to find out how many times greater something is. So we would do 6 times 10 to the 7th divided by 6 times 10 to the 6th. They're both meters, so meters will get canceled out. So what you do with scientific notation operations typically is you take the coefficients, that's that number that's not a power of 10, and you do the operation with them. So we're going to do, and we separate it out. We go 6 divided by 6, and that'll be times 10 to the 7th divided by 10 to the 6th. And this makes the calculation much easier. 6 divided by 6 is just 1, and that's going to be times 10. Well, we got 10 to the 7th divided by 10 to the 6th. That means we have 7 factors of 10 in the numerator and 6 factors of 10 in the denominator. We're going to take away 6 factors of 10, which means we can write that as 10 to the 7 minus 6. We can just subtract those exponents, and we get 1 times 10 to the 1st, which means it is 10 times greater. So 10 times greater. Okay, I think I misspelled greater. And I will move this up just a little bit so you can see it there. All right, so Saturn's radius is 10 times greater. Move that down here. Is 10 times greater. Let me drag this over to the left like this so it's not blocking things. Okay, so that's our answer on that one. Now let's take a look at C. All right, again, we were told radius of the lacrosse ball is 0.032 meters. Estimate the radius of the lacrosse ball in meters by expressing the radius as a single-digit number multiplied by a power of 10. What they mean is turn that into scientific notation. The single-digit number is going to be the 3, which will be rounded. Since we're dropping the 2, we're dropping something lower than 5, so we keep it as a 3. So that's going to end up just being 3 times, and then times the power that the 3 is at. So 3 is in the hundredths place, which is 10 to the negative 2. But if you were unsure, all you'd need to do is count how many places does this decimal have to move to get to be to the right of the 3. And it's 1, 2. And since the 3 is to the right of the decimal, that means we are dividing instead of multiplying by 10 to get to that 3. So it's 10 to the negative 2. Negative exponents are repeated division instead of repeated multiplication. Okay, they tell us how many times we're using 10 as a divisor. Okay, now let's continue on to part D. And in part D, we're going to figure out how many times greater the radius of Earth is than the radius of the lacrosse ball. And I'll remind you from our earlier information, the Earth is 6 times 10 to the 6 meters, and we're trying to find out how many times greater, so we're dividing. So we're going to say 6 times 10 to the 6th meters divided by 3 times 10 to the negative 2 meters. Okay, meters is going to drop out because it's in numerator and denominator, and we aren't caring about a unit. We're just caring, in this case, it's just a ratio of the two sides. Now, as I said before, you want to separate out the coefficients. The 6 and the 3 are called the coefficients, and do that operation separately from the operation on the powers. 10 to the 6 divided by 10 to the negative 2. And 6 over 3 is just 2, and 10 to the 6 over 10 to the negative 2 means we are going to be dividing, and just like we did before, we are going to subtract those exponents. Okay, since it's the same base. So we get 10 times 10 to the 6 minus negative 2, and 6 minus a negative is like 6 plus a positive, so that's 6 plus 2, so that's 10 to the 8th. And then we would state the Earth's radius is 2 times 10 to the 8th times greater than the radius of a lacrosse ball. By the way, when you are doing these open responses, please go ahead and finish things by just stating what the answer is at the end of it. That is one of the things that divides people between a 2 and a 3 on the score, or a 3 and a 4 on the score, and the score goes from 0 to 4. You want to explain things as if you are explaining how this works to someone who really doesn't understand, which would kind of capture what's going on here. So I'm hoping that helps you. So explain your answers as if you were explaining to someone who does not know math. And that will help you get more points. All right, just to recap, I will say one thing. So we're using the laws of exponents. If you're dividing powers that have the same base, you subtract the exponents. If you're multiplying powers that have the same base, you add the exponents. If you are raising a power to a power, so 10 to the 3rd power raised to the 5th power, that's 5 sets of 3 factors of 10, which means we would do 5 times 3 factors of 10. So you multiply that power. So raising a power to a power, you multiply the powers. Multiplying two of the same base that are to some powers, you add the powers. Dividing, you subtract the powers like we did in this one.